take me soon, 'cause I am here for a reason. Sometimes in my tears I drown, but I never let it get me down. So when negativity surrounds, I know someday it'll all turn around, because all my life I've been waiting for, I've been crying for the people to say that we don't wanna fight no more, that we number one. Cause you will say one day, one day, one day, one day, one day, one day. Start about we don't lose, we are lose when they're feeling the souls of the innocent, blood French fire. Keep on moving, though the ones are still ready. Give me space, you may lose your way. Your way, my try you crazy, but don't let it get away. No way. Sometimes in my tears I drown, but I never let it get me down. So negativity is around, I know someday it'll all turn around, because all my life I've been waiting for, I've been crying for the people to say that we don't want to fight no more, that we no more war, and I'm sure one day, one day, one day, one day, one day, one day. One day all will change, should be not the same. Stop with the violence, now with the game. One day we'll all be.
Wamukeli magongo na mandoyo Nayuri bere tutingi hoto nidu Mwene nyaga kwa kuhoya Tuhoyaga wedani na niteo Naga nyingi siya wendo warolele Oyu wano wadekuyu na mumi Mwene nyaga Twakohoya tukona na kihode Umangomu kinyakare matora Idiyo kihanege gatira Jamba siaitana sinito Kama kimo uwahero kombo Jamba siaitana.
A good day. I hope you're having an amazing Saturday. It's the 24th of August 2024, 12:39 p.m. and this is the diary of a young black king. And of course we started with some music today. The first song was Bob Marley, I guess. Was it Bob Marley? It was let me find out. It's just a song I love. It was by it's by Bob Marley. It's called One Day. And of course, today we're going to be talking about a very interesting conversation. We're going to be having a very interesting conversation that I love. It's one of the most influential books I've perhaps ever read. It's Robert Greene's 48 Laws of Power. So we're going to be looking at the 48 Laws of Power and how Africans can actually draw lessons from the same. What lessons can we learn from Robert Greene's 48 Laws of Power as African people, as we are fighting for our second liberation? Because one might argue that we are fighting for our second liberation. And playing right now is Kwame Rigi with a song called Mwene Nyaga. Mwene Nyaga means the god of the mountains. It's a spiritual Kikuyu song. So of course you can tell me where you are listening from and how your Saturday is going. It's a cold Saturday afternoon in Nairobi. It hasn't been raining, but it's very, very cold. It's been a cold week generally. That's why I have a hot cup of tea. Thanks to Joby. I was just finishing setting up the show, and I guess now we are ready and we can begin. Today we're going to be talking about Robert Greene's and the 48 Laws of Power and lessons that Africa can learn from the same. So be with me for the next 2 hours as we look at all those laws and perhaps which ones, because I do believe this is one of the most influential books I've ever read. I don't know about you. You can tell me your the most influential book you've ever read. I'm going to read it and perhaps analyze it in one of our shows. But for today, I want us to look at Robert Greene's. The other day, we looked at John Perkins, The Confessions of an Economic Hitman. And it was a really interesting book, especially with matters to do with economic, how the economic structure is built in the world and the neo-colonialism, and how the system is already rigged against Africans from the word go, against Africans and other developing countries. They target everybody. So it was an interesting book. So today let us look at Robert Greene's. We're going to go law by law and try to get some of the lessons that as African people we can learn from the 48 Laws of Power. So I'll be here for the next 2 hours. You can talk to me on all our social media platforms at the Black Hot Fire Radio, the Black Hot Fire Network, the media of the 21st century. That is on Instagram, on Facebook, although our Facebook page was pulled down, on and also on our website. I'm also live on the website. So law number 1 of the 48 Laws of Power is perhaps a cliche because you hear of it every now and then. It's never outshine your masters. That in whatever you do, ensure that those above you feel superior. Make them believe that they are the brightest and the most capable. The idea is to avoid colliding with them too soon, which could lead to insecurity and resentment. So this is a lesson that we've learned the hard way as African people. The never outshine your master part, but it's also a law that many people misunderstand, to you always cowering behind your masters. So if we marry this with there's another law also in the 48 Laws of Power that talks about master the art of timing. So the never outshine your master goes hand in hand with master the art of timing. Know when to and when not to. And if we look back at history, the law number 1 has taken down so many great African leaders who went for too soon before the time was. An example is, I know we had this conversation the other day with Keith, and I was telling him, I think the wise of the Pan-Africans, the earlier Pan-Africans, the likes of Mwalimu Julius Nyerere, survived for so long because they sat on the fence, which is not a good thing, but they knew when to and when not to. If we look at the Pan-Africans who went for it too early, the likes of Patrice Lumumba, great Pan-Africans who shaped the way Africa is today, and who have, still many Africans still draw inspiration from such people. You look at Kwame Nkrumah, you look at Patrice Lumumba, you look at Thomas Sankara, you look at all those Pan-Africans that started the spirit of Pan-Africanism in Africa. However, most of them went for it too early. You look at Patrice Lumumba, for example, he was killed because of a speech he gave in that never sat well with the masters, and they had to eliminate him for that, which you have to give it for him for his bravery, because he could not have his principles bent by anything. But it also took Congo back then, Zaire. It took Zaire back many years. That is why up to date it has never recovered, because after he was, of course, eliminated, they then put in their puppet, who continued stealing from the people of Congo up to date. It has just been handed down to different other people. So you look at that point, for somebody like Patrice Lumumba, being too vocal about his stand at the moment was, according to me, it's just that my opinion, according to me, was a brave thing to do, but the wrong timing, because at that time, with the architecture that was there, that was what was bound to happen at that time. And that is why other Pan-Africans like Mwalimu Julius Nyerere and the rest supported Africans. They even supported other African freedom fighters, for example, those from South Africa. I understand Tanzania was one of the countries that housed freedom fighters from South Africa. So they knew when to and when not to. They knew the perfect timing to do. And the other perfect example that I would give is that of Mwai Kibaki, who was a former Kenyan president. He knew what would happen if he went into it too early and maybe tried to outshine the master in this case being the powers that be. I don't want to get so deep into. So that is why he always did things to benefit the Kenyan people, but did them in a way that didn't raise alarm to the master. Not until many years later, that is when they are now realizing what he did. Did things like introducing a new constitution that would see Kenya become freer than most African countries in terms of freedom of speech, expression, movement, political freedoms. He brought about free primary education, which they didn't see back then, but now they see the effect that the free primary education, which is the basic education, the basic arithmetic, the basic communication, had on the people. He, however, was not fully vocal. He never went fully vocal on the masters trying to go against them in public, because he knew at the moment, mastering the art of timing, all that would have done is have him eliminated and another puppet implanted, like they did in so many countries. They did in Tanzania, they did with the likes of Gaddafi. So in the 48 laws of power, the law number 1, never outshine your master, is a law that we should marry with mastering the art of timing as African people, and especially as African leaders, and because at some point we do get some good African leaders. At maybe once every 30 years, we do get one sane African leader who has the will of the people in his heart, the interest of the people. You can talk about the likes of Traore, you can talk about the likes of Mwai Kibaki, you can talk about the likes of Julius Nyerere, you can talk about the likes of Thomas Sankara. Those are leaders in the past 40, 30 years who've had the interest of the people at heart. And if you look at all of those leaders that I've mentioned, those ones who did not master the art of timing too well and went too vocal too early were eliminated. And that never helped the people really, because it ended up taking back the countries backwards. Because now when they were eliminated, of course, they were replaced by more puppets, bigger puppets. So I don't know what lesson you think Africans can learn from the first law of power, never outshine your master. But I think Africans should learn the art of timing from the never outshining your master part, knowing when to hit and when not to hit, and when to because at the moment you look at the architecture, the whole of it from the top downwards has been rigged. And so it's really, really hard for you to, unless you are very united as a people, the whole of Africa is united as a continent, we can't bring down the system in a day. We can't bring down the conditioning and the system in a day, being realistic. We can achieve that. It's achievable, but not in a day, not in a year, maybe in a few years. I mean, we are talking about bringing down the whole education system, bringing down the whole religious system, bringing down the whole economic system, bringing down the whole judicial system, bringing down the whole governance system, talking about introducing new currencies, economic reforms. It's not something that is achievable in a year. It's something that you achieve step by step, maybe in a few years, because it's about reconstituting the whole architecture from up downwards. And so I think we should, the lesson that we can learn is to master the art of timing and not be too hasty sometimes. And there's a law that talks about, in victory, know when to stop and re-strategize again. But you are going to get to that in a minute.
Trust in friends. Learn how. Law number 1. Never outshine the master. Nicolas Fouquet made the mistake of appearing larger than his king, Louis XIV, and spent his remaining days incarcerated. Avoid victories over superiors. It will cost you more than it is worth. Law number 2. Never put too much trust in friends. Learn how to use enemies. Michael III of the Byzantine Empire was saved from death by Basilius, who Michael in turn favored with gifts and prestige. Basilius, lusting for more power, murdered Michael out of greed. Instead of showing gratitude, he was insatiable. Trust from a distance. People are selfish and pursue their own interests. Former opponents make more loyal and stronger friends.
Yeah, in law number 2 says, never put too much trust in friends. Learn how to use your enemies, because friends can betray you more easily because they know your vulnerabilities. You go back to African history and you look at the number of times when we have had a friend betray, a betrayal that was caused by a friend, especially to do with Africa. If you look at the African history in matters politics, you look at, for example, somebody like Kwame Nkrumah, you look at what happened to him and who are the people who are on the verge, on the top of the circles that betrayed him, that saw him could and overthrown from power. They were all his friends. And the problem with having too much trust in your friends is that perhaps every human being is corruptible, and they say everybody has a price. So the fact that they know you have that much trust in, and I'm talking about this because we are at a time where Africa is almost going into the second liberation. I'm calling it a second liberation because this one is a liberation against neocolonialism that is deeper than even the actual colonialism, because this one hits everywhere. It hits in all the systems and all it hits. It's even slavery of the mind. So the other mistake that we can make as African people is having too much trust in, as a leader, as a politician. You look at, for example, Traore. We saw the Senegalese president Diomaye Faye visiting Traore the other day with friendly gestures, and of course, because they are both young people from the West African countries, and comes the mistake of you having trust in your fellow African out of naivety and believing that he is my brother. But you look at it, later emerged that Diomaye Faye had been sent by ECOWAS to go and try to convince Traore to come back to ECOWAS, because apparently ECOWAS had figured out that without the 3 Sahel countries, it was going to fail, because they were the most stable and they were very rich. So that is we look at most of the, even in the Kenyan freedom fight, you look at somebody like General Field Marshal Dedan Kimathi, who's perhaps the man who led the Mau Mau. He's the man who led the Mau Mau. He was the commander of the Mau Mau. He was betrayed by a friend. who shot him and had him arrested. You look at, even after independence, when we had the first government, you look at people like JM. JM was a Kenyan politician back then, an MP in the 60s and the 70s. He was shot by his friend. I gave you this story the other day, where how he once went to a fundraiser and raised more money than the president and contributed more money than the president, and that never sat well with the president because of law number 1 of never outshining your master. So JM went to a fundraiser and he contributed more money than the then Kenyan president Jomo Kenyatta. And so it looked like he was trying to overshadow him, because apparently I think Kenyatta contributed $1 million and this guy contributed $3 million. So that never sat well with the president, because as the president, he believed nobody should contribute more money than him. He is the president. And so he was called for a summoning to go and answer a few questions on why he did that. And when in that summon, the person who shot him, because he was shot and killed, was his closest friend, who was also a police boss. So when Robert Greene talks about never put too much trust in your friends, because friends can betray you more easily because they know your vulnerabilities. Instead, use enemies, because with enemies, they always have, especially with former enemies, they'll always be trying to convince you. It's like they have a point to prove. And the other thing with friends is it comes with entitlement, and that has also been another cause of so many downfalls in African political class. If we look back at history, where a certain person helped another person in a coup or trying to take over a government, and now because I helped you and you're my friend, now I need a part of the government, and that never ends well. So that's law number 2 of the 48 laws of power, which says never put too much trust in friends. Learn how to use your enemies, because your enemies always they're always trying to prove something. They are trying to win your trust back, for example. They have that guilt still in them. So you can work with your friends, just never put too much trust in them. And I saw this the other day in the Sahel. I saw Mali and in the Nigerian pipeline, where Niger had a pipeline that was to pass through Benin, which has been friends with Niger for long, but apparently when Niger had that coup, Benin was one of the countries that was insisting on sending military intervention to Niger. That is, if the leadership is not taken back to what they call democratically elected government. So when Niger got that deal with China to build to be supplying 120,000 barrels of oil for 400 million, it tried constructing an oil through Benin, and a pipeline through Benin. Benin requested that if they want to transport their oil through them, they have to open the borders. But instead, Niger decided to go the other side, the Moroccan side, which the two of them have always been enemies. So that was law number 2. Law number 3 talks about conceal your intentions. Don't let people know your intentions too early. It says keeping your true plans and objectives hidden from others prevent them from sabotaging or countering your efforts. By masking your intentions, you create uncertainty and allow yourself to maneuver without interference. Yeah, this is the one that I was talking about when I was explaining the first law, where if you look at African, especially the first and the second presidents in African countries who are able to use this third law, then their countries are not the same as others. They are more developed. You look at Kenya, for example, it's more developed. It's the most developed economy in East and Central Africa. You would owe that to President Mwai Kibaki, Kibaki, because he knew the texture of the political landscape he was working in. He knew it was a losing battle at that time to try and fight against the system at that point. Because he knew, looking at the political landscape, looking at the architecture of things, looking at the number of foreign army bases we have in Kenya, looking at the current security status in the country, that is, can our army even be able to stand up and fight against them at the moment? With our 1950-old helicopters, with our 60, 70-year-old warfares, and guns that don't work, and police that are never paid, and an under-equipped military, can we be able to fight against them at the moment as a single country? So when he understood that, he applied the third law, which empowered people years later after he's dead, because he's dead. And I said he's the reason why you saw the Kenyan young people revolution. The Kenyan youth revolution was because of Mwai Kibaki, because he knew how to conceal his intentions. He was bettering the people, but they didn't know even what he was doing. He was working on having a new constitution. He was working on making sure education is free. He was working on making sure it was during his time that about 50% of Kenya got electrified. I remember in our village, we first saw electricity during Kibaki's time. That was when electricity came. It was at his time that he bettered roads and infrastructure. It was during his time that he bettered healthcare. It was during his time that he strengthened the Kenyan shilling, making it perhaps the most powerful currency in East and Central Africa, even though it's really a powerful currency among other poor currencies. So it's not really but it was during that time, and for the fact that he did all that without them, without making too much noise, without attracting too much attention, without appearing like he was fighting against anybody, he looked like he was doing what they wanted him to do. But silently, that man was building Kenya. Look at Mwalimu Julius Nyerere too. I'll go back to him. He's the reason Tanzania is also a bit more developed if you compare it with other countries in the region. It is a freer country in comparison to the others. Freer in that in Tanzania, the freedom of speech is up there. The freedom of expression is up there. There's too much freedom in Tanzania. I sometimes think Tanzania is freer than Kenya, because you look at even how their police force behave, you compare it with the Kenyan police force. It's the fact that Julius Nyerere was able to do that for all those years and was never, brought all those reforms, and he was never assassinated or could. Is application of the third law of power of concealing your intentions. Don't show your intentions too early. And you look at history, you look at all the people who showed their intentions too early, they were eliminated. You look at the likes of Tom Mboya from Kenya, who by the 50s, he was giving speeches in the US talking about liberation of Africa and the unification of the Africans in the diaspora and those in Africa. A very good thing and a very courageous thing to do, but at the wrong time, because at that time, again, for now, it's a bit freer now, even though there's still a high chance that if you start talking like that, you'll be eliminated. But at that time, it wasn't even a chance. It was 100% certainty that if you give some type of talk, and so that is how most of those brilliant African minds were eliminated from the political scene. Talking about the likes of Pio Gamapinto from Kenya, Tom Mboya, Pixley Kaisa Seme of South Africa, and so many others who became too vocal and showed their intentions too early. That never sat well with the powers that benefit from an ignorant continent. So that is law 3, conceal your intentions, because that is going to prevent sabotage.
Law number 3, conceal your intentions. The Marquis de Sévigné wanted to seduce a young countess. Instead of being indirect and subtle, he exposed his true feelings for her and she lost all interest, as he blurted out that he loved her. Add a sense of unexplicable mystery to your character. Law number 4, always say less than necessary.
That is the other law. Law number 4, always say less than necessary. The less you say, the more powerful you appear, because people are always impressed by mystery more than verbosity. And the other main reason for saying less than necessary is the more you talk, the more likely you are to say something stupid. The more you talk, the more likely you are to reveal your intentions. And as Africans, as we are trying to liberate ourselves once again for the second liberation, which is the liberation against economic sabotage, against political sabotage, and all those neocolonialism, then that is where law number 4 fully applies, where let us try to conceal our intentions and not speak too much to a point that we end up exposing more than we should. And I would say the reason the Kenyan revolution, for example, has stalled, because it at one point stalled, that is why we've not had demos for the last couple of weeks, was because it reached a point where people were saying more than they were doing. The leaders who were, because even though the people were saying they were leaderless, there were people who were at the forefront. There were people who were organizing. There were mobilizers. They were never leaders, but there were people who helped in mobilizing. So it reached a point where people were more concentrated on talking than doing, and they would wake up to interviews every day on TV stations talking about this, talking about that, talking about where they'll be tomorrow, who they are going, their whole routine. And so it became so easy even for the government to be able to infiltrate the protests with goons, because they knew the whole plan. They knew where the demos were going to begin. They knew where the demos were going to end, what time, what color code. And so the government started infiltrating the demos with goons. So you would be meeting somewhere and goons would come dressed the same way as you are. And as you are peacefully demonstrating, those ones will be breaking into shops and stealing from the businesses. And the police would be watching without interfering with them. And so, of course, that would ended up angering the business community, because it was hard now to, in as much as the protests were peaceful and the demonstrators were very peaceful and people who just wanted change, the demos would give an avenue for the government to pay goons who would come with weapons and, of course, infiltrate the peaceful demonstrations. So that never ended up not sitting well with most young people, because they didn't want to be part of that chaos, and two, it never sat well with the business community, which had its in Ronga, where the studio is, for example. We had a supermarket robbed to the ground. We had shops being robbed. So that never sat well with the peaceful young people. And of course, the main purpose, the main aim the government was doing that was because it wanted to shift public perception of the demos, because the public perception of the demos was too positive, and the whole country was behind the young people. The whole world was behind, the whole Africa was behind the young people, because they were so peaceful, and never before had we seen demonstrations as peaceful as those. However, I think the main reason we failed, although we never failed, we achieved a lot. The main reason we stalled is the word, temporarily stalled, because I also believe we will be back, is that we spoke too much than we did. We spoke more than we acted. We started speaking more than doing. We were too much focused on trying to impress with words. But when it came to actually being in the streets, then have the people who are hyping and pushing the tags would not come out. So the demos would look big online, but they would be disappointing off, that is, on the ground, especially for the last demos. For example, the Nane, the 8th of August demo that happened about how many days ago? 14 days ago, I'd say 2 weeks ago. So it's important as Africans, as African people, as African leaders, if we do have leaders, because as I said, sometimes we do have good leaders. Maybe once every 30 years, a good leader pops up somewhere in Africa. We have to learn law 4 of Robert Greene's of always saying less than necessary. Because in our effort to impress with words, we end up either saying something stupid or forgetting to conceal our intentions. And the other reason why you should always say less than necessary is because in silence, you allow others to project their thoughts and interpretations. So that is Robert Greene's law 4. Always say less than necessary. So much.
Law number 5. So much depends on reputation, guarded with your life. During the Second World War, Erwin Rommel was known for his superior skill in cunning and deceptive strategy. All of the opposition were demoralized and doubting their chances of success facing him. Your reputation precedes you. Build and protect it carefully. Law number 6. Court attention at all costs.
But now the problem is, I don't even know how what I can talk about African leaders in the aspect of guarding your reputation, which is generally sometimes your reputation is going to even it's more solid than all the other things. Like if people know you can be counted on, if people know. If I know that if I give you this money, I'm guaranteed to get the money back, then I won't be having a problem giving the money back. I remember when I was in Uganda, that is a few years ago, when I had a business in Uganda, a shoe business in Uganda. Law number 5 is the one that used to feed me each and every day, because at that time in the business world, and especially that line that I used to sell shoes. I had a shoe shop, a sneakers shop in Kampala. At that time, I would get, I didn't have to pay the full amount in order for me to receive a container of shoes from Nairobi. And the person who used to give me the container of shoes also did not have to pay the full amount to receive the containers from Mombasa. And the person who sent him the container from Mombasa did not have to pay the full amount from the manufacturer in India. And so it was always the manufacturer in India sends a container to Mombasa, to the wholesaler in Mombasa, the distributor in Mombasa. Then the distributor in Mombasa will send the money to India later. That is after he has sold the containers. The same case in Nairobi, the one who's procuring the containers from Mombasa to Nairobi would also not pay the full amount. But because of reputation and trust, the distributor in Mombasa would send the container to Nairobi even without the full payment. The same would happen from Nairobi now to Kampala. We did not have to pay the full amount. Sometimes we didn't even have to pay a cent. We just paid for the truck transport. And the container would be loaded and sent to Kampala. And then we'd open the container and give it to traders who would sell the shoes in the market. And those traders would also not pay us beforehand. So they would come, pick shoes. All you needed was to do a record of which trader picked how many bales of shoes. And then after they have sold the shoes, the market used to be every Wednesday, if I can remember right. So after they have sold the shoes, then they would pay you back they would pay you the money that, because they never paid at the beginning, you lended them. It's like you. So when they sell the shoes, then they would pay me. Then I would send the money to Nairobi. Then the person, the distributor in Nairobi would now send the money to Mombasa. That is to the distributor in Mombasa. Then the distributor in Mombasa would send the money to India, where the shoes were originating. So it's a whole chain that is based on nothing but reputation. The reputation of the trust of me knowing if I give these traders these shoes, they are going to pay me back after they've sold the shoes. The trust of the distributor in Nairobi knowing if he sends a container of shoes, even if it's worth 150,000, we're going to pay back. We're going to pay him at the end of the week. And the distributor in Mombasa knowing if I send the containers to Nairobi, I'm going to receive my money at the end of the week. And so when Law 5 talks about so much depends on reputation, guard it with your life, then reputation is a very, very crucial asset in life, where if people can count on you, if you have a good reputation, then sometimes it's going to help you in avenues that nothing else can, not even money can. For the fact that people can count on you, people can count on your word, people can know where you stand. Well, I would say I learned that law too early, very early in my life, because at that time I was around 17 or 18 when I was already having that business and learning about how reputation is everything. And if you know, the wholesaler in Nairobi just gave us one rule. He gave me one rule, that if I know I'm not going to deliver money on a certain day, then don't promise. Don't say I'm going to send money on a certain day when you're not sure if you're going to. You'd rather tell him before that I'm not going to send the money, you know. And I learned the art of words, where if you become a reliable person and people can always bank or count on your words, then that is worth more than even you being rich. The fact that people can always count. If you say, I'm going to have this done by next Monday, you're going to have it done by next Monday. So that is why Robert Greene talks about guard your reputation with your life. Manage how you are perceived by others, ensuring that your actions and behaviors consistently reinforce a positive image. And so if it involves you putting on masks every day, because I do believe in life we put up different masks every day depending on who you're interacting with. For example, the same way you interact with your boss is not the same way you interact with your friends. There's a certain image that you put up in work. There's a certain image that you put up at home. There's a certain image that you put up in every avenue that you have in your life. So even if it involves putting up an image, it's always important to ensure that you have you consistently reinforce a positive image. I couldn't even marry that with African leaders and what they can learn from that, because those are people who don't really care about reputation. And we have come to be, as African people, we've also come to be people who do not really care about reputation. That is why if you look at almost every African leader at the moment, every African president, even before they were elected, they had corruption cases over and over that were reason enough to not have them elected if you were people who looked at reputation and looked at the moral standing of people before electing them. Then most of the leaders we have would not be elected. You look at somebody like Jacob Zuma, you look at the number of votes he got in South Africa and the amount of money he had stolen, then you realize that we do not even care too much in Africa. We do not even care about somebody's track record. In fact, I do think we care, because for you to be elected in Africa, you have to have had a corruption case somewhere. If you are clean, then nobody is going to elect you, because we celebrate, and we have come to be people who celebrate mediocrity, people who celebrate corruption, and people who celebrate incompetence too much. That is why I couldn't even find an avenue to marry Law 5. with the African people, the African leaders. Yeah, so let us look at Law 6. I was trying to play a certain video. It's yeah.
Pablo Picasso would not allow himself to fade into the background for attention at all costs. Pablo Picasso would not allow himself to fade into the background. He would rather paint something out of the ordinary and ugly than be forgotten. All publicity is good publicity. Don't let yourself become one of many. Law number 7.
That is a law that I also learned in my media school on quoting attention at all costs. It's an important law in the business world. I don't know if we should apply that as African people, especially in our economic, in our war, in our battle against economic, in our second generation to say. Yeah, so this one I learned in my PR class, that there is nothing like negative PR, and you should always make sure that you are visible. Put attention at all costs if you have to, because you have to never be overlooked for anything. So that is law 6. I don't think it applies too much in our.
Get others to do the work for you. Thomas Edison wasn't much of a scientist, but a businessman. He would capitalize on Nikola Tesla's genius and garner all the credit. Hire talents capable of doing what you can't. Law number 8.
Yeah, that was Nicholas. Law number 7 is about getting others to do the work for you, but always taking the credit. Something that, as the video has said, Thomas Edison mastered so well, and that is why he ended up being credited for things he never did himself, including taking some of Tesla's work, including the fact that he was not even the one who invented the light bulb. So he mastered this law number 7, where he would leverage on the skills and effort of others and position himself as the primary contributor, even though he never, you ask him how the light bulb works and he's not going to explain that to you, but he is allegedly the one who invented it. So he learned about, he had learned and mastered law 7, and this happened too much to especially African inventors. I know we had a show where we looked at notable African inventors and the inventions they made, and we realized that most of the inventions they made are not even in public record. They're not even known, because they were dealing with people who had, I would say, had mastered the 48 laws of power, who knew, for example, how to take credits for things they had not done. And so history ended up never remembering the ones who did the work, because there were others who took credit for the work that was done by others, especially the African inventors and scientists who did a lot in the early 20th century.
Make other people come to you. Use bait if necessary. When I have laid bait for deer, I don't shoot at the first doe that comes to sniff, but wait until the whole herd has gathered round. Otto von Bismarck. Force your opponent to react to your moves. Law number 9.
This is perhaps the most important law that African people and that we as Africa should embrace. The law, the art of making people come to us rather than us going to them. And I'll give an example. The Nigerian oil deal that it had with China. The Chinese delegation is the one that went to Niger. And so what happens when people come to you is that you sit on the other side of the table. You're the one on the deciding side. They are on the other side. And so the possibility of everything going against your terms is very, very high, because you are the one on this side of the table, they're the one on that other side of the table. And so that is how Niger was able to, for example, secure a 400 million deal for 120,000 barrels of oil. But the problem with us as Africans, we are always on the begging side of the table. We are always the one going to them. We are always the one attending, I don't know, the China summit for what? Make any summit, and African leaders will be there begging on their knees. We even go to Ukrainian summits. Ukraine as a country, how does Ukraine, how is Ukraine supposed to be helping Africans? And so we have never really mastered the art of making people come to us, even though we are the ones with what they need. We are the ones with what they need, but we are the ones going to them. We are the ones always begging them, even though they are the ones who need us. So we've never really mastered the art of making people come to us. Because once people come to you, you are the one in control. You are the ones who's shaping the terms of engagements. They are the ones on the begging side. And so as we are thinking about making Africa better, and of course, from what it is right now, as I said, we cannot still operate alone as Africans. We do need the other sides of the world because, for example, with our minerals, we can't exhaust them as Africans alone. We need to sell, for example, our oil to the West. We need to sell sometimes we need to sell our cobalt to them. We do need to trade with them. But now the problem is when we are always the ones on the begging side, even when we are the ones at an advantage. How is Congo on the begging side when it holds the cobalt? How is Central African Republic on the begging side when it holds the diamonds? The others should be the ones on the begging side. They're the ones who should be flooding. They're the ones who should be flooding Central African Republic, begging for the diamonds. And Central African Republic should be the one in a position to determine who gets the diamond and who doesn't at their own terms. However, that is never the case because we refused to implement and understand and learn the art of Law 8 of the 48 laws of making other people come to you rather than you going to them. Because you going to people is a weakness, is a sign of weakness. You heading to people to ask for help, you going to the US to ask for a discussion on your, for example, Uganda going to Russia to ask for help with their nuclear. Russia is the one at the advantage side, and Uganda will have to play by the terms. You came to me, so you have to play by my rules. So if we learn Law 8, then it is easier for us to manipulate the outcome to our advantage. We should be the ones organizing the Nairobi Asia Summit. Let the Asians come to Nairobi, sit down in our tables, and listen to our terms. And a big shout out to Danny Harrison, who's with me. Let me look at the comments real quick before I go to Law 9. Danny Harrison says, your representation can open doors for you with people you don't know because of third-party information. They've heard about you. That representation has a lot to do with that. He's talking about guarding your reputation with your life. Law 5. And that's true because the other thing that I learned in the business world when I was operating a business that young is that the biggest marketer for your business is not even running ads and everything. The biggest way your business grows, the biggest marketers of your business are people you serve well. For example, if Jiba Jaba with his landscaping business does a good job on your loan, then you're going to recommend him to someone else. And sometimes you even get businesses from people you don't know because of somebody you didn't know who you did a service to, and they liked it and they recommended it to someone else. And so I do agree with Danny Harrison when he's saying sometimes third parties will pass information about your business to other people you've never even heard about. So he's emphasizing on the need of guarding your reputation with your life. If it is going to open doors where nothing else can. And he says, if you cultivate the right representation and it applies in the right situation, that gives you soft power, hence influence. Danny Harrison goes on to say, your influence can be used to benefit not just you, but those who you choose to use it for on their behalf. And he goes on to say, why does nobody attack America? Because America has a representation of having a powerful military. Wow. So from the image that the Americans have, the image that the Americans have instilled on the rest of the world is that we are untouchable. we have the best military, we have the Delta Force, I don't know, we have the US Marine, we have the Special Forces, and that has instilled fear in the rest of the world to a point that we don't even know if they are that powerful. They might be, but one thing that I know is we overestimate their military power. For example, from the image that they have set on us. How we perceive them is we perceive them as a they have a powerful military. So who's going to mess with a country with that perception? But I don't think we've ever learned the art of perception ourselves as Africans, because you look at how we perceive ourselves, for example, and the reason you look at, for example, the reason why we have so many Africans dying in the seas every year trying to go to Europe, other African dying in the Middle East working as maids, being sexually assaulted, others trying to cross over to Spain, others trying to fake visas to go to Canada. Perception. The image that they have, those countries portray of themselves, is that of they instill a Western American Europe dream that everybody wants to achieve. We think America is this heaven of a place. You look at Netherlands and you think it's a place where it's bountiful, nobody suffers from anything, because that's the image that has been portrayed of them. And you look at the image that has been portrayed of Africa, which you've seen growing up and which you see in the media and which you see on the news and which you see on the internet. You Google Africa and the first image that is going to come up is a poverty porn image. It's a child in Ethiopia with flies on his face and asking for help, or an image of Kibera slums or something. And so you compare the two realities. As a young African child, as a young African boy in Ghana, you compare the two realities of the image that is portrayed of the UK, the image that is portrayed of Spain, the image that is portrayed of Dubai, and what you see every day on the internet, on the media, and in real life. And you buy this other perception, and now you want to get the hell out of Africa, even if it means dying on the sea. How many people die on the sea? Last week we had 16 dying, and we have people dying every week. I can assure you, I'm not a prophet, but next week I'm going to report on some people who died trying to cross over to Europe. That is how powerful perception is, and representation, as Danny Harrison is saying. And so from us perceiving ourselves as that, and from us always being at the poverty side of life, looking at ourselves from the poverty side of life, then that has even normalized Africans believing that they're supposed to live like that. They don't see a problem with it anymore because that's all they know, that's the perception they have, and that is how they believe they should be. So you find they do not even question their leaders anymore. They don't ask for better because the better that they know is what they see. They don't know how, they don't even understand. You try to explain to somebody how Africa is supposed to be rich, and they don't understand that because their perception of richness is not even. You saw the other on Saturday, I was showing kids a hospital in Kenya that I perceived to be a good hospital. I thought it was a decent hospital. It is actually one of the best hospitals in the country, in East Africa. And they was telling me that's a normal poor people's hospital in the US. And Danny Harrison goes on to say, letting others do the work for you allows you the range of increasing your representation by using that as influence to gain soft power from achievements you didn't necessarily achieve. That is in regards to law 6. And he says, now talking about law 8, when people come to you, then that means you hold all the cards, which means you can dictate terms, which means you are in control. Something that we've never learned as Africans. You're always the ones going to beg them, and they're always the one holding the cards. And he says, beside, when you make people come to you, that strengthens your image because it makes you look assertive, hence an alpha. And he says this coincidentally goes into law 9, which we are going to be looking at the moment in a minute. So law 9 says, win through your actions, never through your arguments. It goes on to say, actions speak louder than words. Demonstrating your abilities and achieving tangible results is more effective than engaging in debates or discussions. Proving your point through successful outcomes reinforces your position and authority more convincingly than mere argument. And that was what Danny Harrison was marrying and saying. For the fact that you now look assertive because people came to you, then it shows you are about actions more than you are about talks. And it also goes back to the law of always saying less than necessary. And it also brings me back to the Kenyan demos, because they are perhaps the recent example that we can use. They are the recent happening. So we can use that as a case study where in the Kenya's demos that have stalled temporarily, we ended up trying to win so much through argument than through actions. I said it reached a point where it was now about who is getting interviewed where, who is in CNN, who is in Sky. That is for the mobilizers who are top up there, because even though a revolution might be leaderless, there's always the people at the top. There's always people who, for example, decide what is going to happen on this day. Nothing can really be leaderless as that. It might not have a solid structure, but there's always people, influential people. There are always influential people at the top. So the influential people in the demos ended up being people who wanted to win more through arguments. They were always in the medias. They ended up saying was required of them, and that made it so easy for the government to infiltrate the protest, and that is why they temporarily stalled until maybe we restructure again and go back. Law 10 talks about avoiding the unhappy and the unlucky. I know if Kid was in the show, he would marry this very easily, very quickly with energies. He talks about associating with people who are consistently unhappy or unlucky affects your own prospect and energy, because you're always around negative energy, and that is going to get into your own energy as well. Talks about the importance of seeking relationships that are positive and constructive rather than associating with the unhappy and the unlucky.
9. Win through your actions, not through arguments. Lucianus needed strong ships. Without guarding his tongue, his engineer argued that a different type than the one Lucianus preferred would be much better for conquest. Despite being right, the engineer was sentenced to death. Don't argue with authorities. Agree and suggest an alternative, then demonstrate. Law number 10. Infection. Avoid the unhappy and unlucky. Lola Montes brought down the king of Bavaria and his whole kingdom by seducing him. Her lust for destruction and chaos was insatiable. Countless lives perished because of her nature. Cut off the fire starters. Try to help them instead and you will burn alongside them. Law number 11.
Yeah, so Robert Graves gives the story of Lola Montes in explaining Law 10, which I won't look into so much because I want to talk about Law 11, which is perhaps the biggest problem that we have in Africa. Law 11 talks about learn to keep people dependent on you. And that is a law that, and a big shout out to General Mosquito who's just joined. So Law 11 is perhaps the law that the powers that are responsible for what Africa is today have learned and mastered, and I have to give it to them because it has worked for them for so many years and it's still working for them. They mastered this law and it has kept them rich in the expense of Africans. Law 11 says, learn to keep people dependent on you. It says, create a dynamic where others rely on your unique skills, knowledge, or resources. And they did that with resources. And the first thing that they did perhaps to reinforce Law 11, which they have reinforced so well, is controlling the money, the financial systems in the world. and from the Bretton Woods institutions, with how the first step was to make sure that Africa was in debt. They did that from John Perkins, the Confessions of an Economic Hitman, through sometimes even forcing loans on countries that did not require them, forcing white elephant projects on countries so that the countries would be indebted. The main purpose of that was to make sure that the people are dependent on them. And so when they did that, when they were giving out loans, they would also add conditions on the loans that would make sure that the conditions were to make sure that the countries that were loaned would not be able to pay back. So they would make sure that businesses in your countries were not doing well. They would make sure that the government was not even able to collect. They would give you loans above your limit. As a country, you collect $1 billion in revenue, but we give you a loan worth $4 billion. How are you going to get the other $3 billion to repay if you collect $1 billion every financial year in revenues? So what I'm trying to do is entrap you in debt, and I do this so easily by also making sure that the debts are vague and are not released to the public. So I give you an avenue to even steal. As a leader, I really don't care what you do with the money. So I'll give you a lot of money and then make it so easy for you to steal the money, because you're not the one who is going to pay, it's your people. And so we end up borrowing billions and billions, and billions of billions go back to them in terms of offshore accounts, African politicians buying assets abroad. And years later, we look at Africa, we have a debt of about $1 trillion USD total in Africa. And you look at what the $1 trillion debt that we have has done, you can't point at one thing that it has done. But the money has came to Africa and was spent. Half of it was perhaps stolen, because in the loan structures, they make it so easy for the politicians to steal. They include clauses such as non-disclosure clause, that is to make sure that the public does not know how much the government borrowed. So it wouldn't even be we can't even be able to say how much was stolen, because we don't even know how much was borrowed, but we know how much we're supposed to pay, but we don't know how much we borrowed. So in that way, now every 2-3 years we have to go back to the Bretton Woods to borrow money to pay them back. So I go to the IMF, borrow money from them to pay them back a loan that I took 10 years ago. So now I have another loan that I took to pay the one that I took 10 years ago. And in 5 years, I'll go then again to borrow another loan to pay the one that I took to pay the loan that I had taken to pay the loan that had been taken 20 years ago. And if at one point I break that cycle of me borrowing from them to pay them, then my country goes into economic turmoil. If you think I'm making that up, look at what is happening in Ethiopia at the moment. Look at what is going to happen to the Kenyan currency in a few. It's going to weaken. The Kenyan shilling is going to weaken, because we've also been reliant on that cycle where we borrow money, flood our market with dollars, the currency does well, the dollars get exhausted because nobody has demand for the Kenyan shilling, because we don't produce anything substantive to export. So we now go back again, borrow money, flood the market, the currency gets strong again, the dollars get exhausted because nobody has demand for the Kenyan shilling. We go back, borrow again, and that is the structure, that is the cycle in every African country, where we borrow to pay back, we borrow money to pay back loans. And so where does development come in? And for us to borrow money to pay back loans, it means all the revenue we collected, we used to pay back, but it wasn't even enough. So we borrowed to add to our revenue to pay back the loans. So where does the money for development, where will the money for development come from? If the loans we are borrowing are to pay back loans, and all the revenue we are collecting, majority of it goes towards paying debt. So what we have in Africa is a running recurrent expenditure with no development, because the recurrent expenditure is catered for. That is, the salaries are paid, mega salaries, really, those ones will be paid, the recurrent ones, just to make it look like a country is running. But in real sense, you look at development, you look at, they're going to loan you money for development, but make it so easy for the politicians to steal. It's actually almost like they encourage them to steal the money they loan. And so even the money that was meant for development will never really go into development, and now it will have to be paid back in 5 years with double the interests. And in that way, they learned the art of keeping us dependent on them. Now, if they for example, with what happened in Kenya, I remember they downgraded, Moody's downgraded our credit score from speculative to high risk. Now we have to go to them begging, asking them, why did you downplay our credit score? How are we going to live without you? Please give us loans. Now, because we are the ones on the begging side, they are the ones with the card, as Danny Harrison was saying, we'll have to do it on their conditions. And their conditions sometimes, in most cases, because we're the ones who went begging, is now they're going to give us loans, but on resource-backed loans. They're going to say, for us to give you loans, we have to sign up your gold mines. In case you do not, in case you are not able to pay the loans, we might come take your gold mines. And it's not an in case, it's 100% guaranteed you're not going to be able to pay the loans, because, for example, Kenya borrowed 4 trillion. Kenya was seeking to borrow 4 trillion. It collects less than $1 trillion in revenue every year, but it's borrowing 4 trillion. How is it going to pay 4 trillion when it doesn't even collect $1 trillion in revenue? So you sign up your minerals, and in a few years, because you won't be able to pay, you either go back to them to borrow more, to pay them, or they come take your resources. So they've learned law 11 and they've not learned, they've mastered that law. And law 11 is the one that has kept Africa so poor all those years, because they've made us entirely dependent on them. And the only avenues that we were not dependent on them, we were, but not as much, was in the food sector, in the agricultural sector, because we used to grow our own seeds, we used to have our own crops, we used to have our own species of crops that were natural and not altered with, and would give us seeds and would give us bump of harvest. And that was why hunger and famine and was unheard of in Africa before. And that was an area they had not controlled as much yet, but it's an area that they are also seeking to make us dependent on them. That is on our food, our agriculture. That is why there's this sudden shift from natural seeds to GMOs, to genetically modified seeds, genetically modified organisms, genetically modified seeds for our cows, genetically modified. Everything is genetically modified. And if you look at the problem with genetically modified whatever is most of them do not produce seeds. And so what that means is, and remember, they're doing this at the same time privatizing government institutions, including the Kenya Seed Company is about to be privatized. I know even in Uganda they are privatizing corporations. You go to Ghana, they are privatizing corporations. So now you are a farmer who plants crops every year, but does not have seeds to replant the same. So I harvest my maize, I harvest my corn, but I can't replant my corn. My corn can't produce seeds for me to replant. So I have to depend on the Ugandan Seed Corporation, if there's such an institution, to give me seeds to plant. If they don't give me seeds, I'll harvest, eat what I harvested, and die of hunger because I have no seeds. And by nature, I don't think it's a law of nature that for something to not get extinct, it has to reproduce. And the natural way of reproduction is by, if it's crops, spreading their seeds. If it's animals, if it's mammals, by giving birth. If it's birds, it's by laying eggs. But now we are talking about organisms and crops and strains that do not produce seeds. They do not reproduce, meaning the seeds have to be made from somewhere else. And that, marry that with the fact that they are privatizing institutions, those institutions, and now you are fully dependent on them, even on your food. That means if for 1 year they decide they're not giving you seeds, you have nothing to eat. You harvest what you planted, you eat it. Once it's done, you have nothing to plant again. So you are now fully dependent on them. Law 11. And if we are going to liberate ourselves as African people, then we'll have to find a way to go around Law 11 to stop being dependent on anybody as African people. to gain a little independence as a people. But instead, we are headed for the opposite. We are now even getting more dependent on them. Look at the seeds, for example. Then we go to law 12, which they have also mastered perfectly. Law 12 of the 48 laws of power talks about use selective honesty and generosity to disarm your victim. This is another law that they have mastered perfectly. Where they are going to steal, they are going to kill, they are going to oppress, they are going to do all the things that you can talk about to African people. And then they are going to donate 100 million for mosquito nets. And the people are going to celebrate. They are going to go to Congo. They are going to force the kids to dig mines. And buy the same at throwaway prices. And then they are going to build a hospital to cure the kids that they caused the diseases on. Using selective honesty to disarm your victim. They're going to cause a war in Sudan and cause people to die, millions of them to die. And then they're going to send aid. I don't know, US aid, UN aid, and free medical camps in Khartoum. And the people are going to celebrate, thinking that they care about us. I mean, they sent us food, they set up refugee camps for us. Well, in real sense, they're the ones who caused the war that caused the people to be in those camps.
It's called the Hegelian dialectic. It's called problem, reaction, solution.
Mm-hmm.
That's where they run the world. Voice still messed up. It's called well, I had to cancel the show last night. My voice still tore up. Have you guys ever read what I did it years ago? Was on air then. We did that about 5-6 years ago. We went through, if you understand the laws of power, understand the animalistic nature of it. What you understand, it's out of Europe. I want you looking at it's a glimpse into the mind of a European. The laws of power is psychopathic. Look at it as a study into the minds of a European. It's psychopathic. It's not based on any kind of quiet. It's all in deception and how they steal and
manipulation.
Yeah, it's manipulation. If you lived in an African way, nobody gives a fuck whether you're African history. You had apprenticeship. You wanted your apprentice to outshine you because that brought back more glory to you. In the European system, because it's based on selfishness and it's animalistic. Don't ever allow the master gets mad because you outshine them. Well,
the African system was based on cooperation. The European one was based on competition.
Yeah, exactly. So exactly. See, John Moore, because if I'm your so-called master, I want you to succeed me and overdo me because it benefits the collective. I'm not threatened by you. I'm impressed that you've taken the knowledge I've given you and you succeeded what I've done. It's not based. It's not psychopathy. European system. When you're reading this, instead you're going into their psychology and the whole.
It's based on the dark triad, the three dark triad.
Yeah, see, it's based on this psychopathy. The whole book is it's psychopathy. And that's the way they run the world now. Got control of the planet. Their system. So I don't think you just read about power. I'm saying you're delving into the mind of a European. It's based on, as like the more says, based on stealing, deception, coercion. It's all psychopathic.
Machiavellianism.
Yes, Machiavelli. Yeah, well, yeah, 101. Machiavellianism 101. And,
Yeah.
you know, like, because when I was in college already years ago, I wasn't as intelligent yet to what I was now. I didn't understand that I was delving into the mind of the European. Because it always caught me off guard, me being asked. That's a lot of manipulation. You can't be truthful about nothing at all. You gotta be deceiving and lying on. God damn.
But if we are going to fight against these people, we have to understand these rules and understand
You
how
do.
they operate.
You do. You have to understand them. Sad enough, they set these left behind system in Africa and put these despots who are just as psychopathic as them. But you know, when we went back and read again about 7 years ago, I was like, because I understand now their mindset. This thing is fucking psychopathic for real. It's the mind of a psychopath. It tells you to be corrupt, be silent, learn to steal where you can, learn to manipulate. It's like it should be. It shouldn't be the 48 laws of power. It should be how to be a good con man. Because it's psycho. Because at that time I acquired more knowledge. I was like, wow, this is animalistic. And then somebody else.
I was saying at the beginning of the show, politicians, African leaders, especially those ones at the beginning who mastered the 48 laws of power, ended up helping their people so much. And I talked about, for example, Kibaki, who learned how to conceal his intentions, who learned how to not outshine the master. So he would hide behind the shadows, but behind the shadows, he was working for his people, the likes of Julius Nyerere, who would also appear cowardice, not trying, never be vocal against the masters, never. He was not the same as the likes of Sankara, who would be vocal about what they felt.
Understand the situation that you were in, and that you didn't have the power to really overthrow this goddamn psychopathic European. So you would act in silence behind while changing it underneath their nose. I get what the Morris says. So you'd be more deceptive, understand the nature of the beast that you're dealing with. So when you talking about like a Thomas Sankara or Lumumba, who was outspoken and in the European space, now understand the Europeans not going to take that too kindly. You talking shit in their face, and they feel like they're superior to you, and they have the means to come get your ass. Saying like Magufuli down in Tanzania a couple years ago. Oh, this shit's fake. This damn COVID-19 is a scam. It's a lie. I'm not shutting down no country. I'm not doing nothing they tell me. I agree she did it, but maybe she should be more silent about it, more tactful, because knowing the European nature, what they're trying to do, you just say, I'm not really sure about this thing. I'm listening to the scientists. They are the scientists, and like you said, like using deception. They are the scientists, but maybe sometimes we use the mask, not all the time, and we see how things go. I wouldn't be outspoken. This is bullshit. This is nonsense. I'm not locking down shit. So I might lock down the country on the weekends, maybe, just for safety, just to be, like I'm playing ball with these psychopaths.
Yeah.
So
because you getting eliminated is more of a loss to your country than a benefit. Because look at, for example, Congo. What happened after Zaire then? What happened after Patrice Lumumba was killed? They had the other dictator, Mobutu Sese Seko, who ruined the country. So Lumumba getting eliminated was more of a loss to Zaire than it was a benefit.
Well, it was still the Congo. It was damn Mobutu changed the name to Zaire with his dumb ass. So as soon as they got rid of his ass, they changed it back to the Congo. You're so right. Mm-hmm. You're right in all aspects. And I don't think they understood. But I don't say you couldn't, but maybe they wasn't intelligent to understand. Even though they lived under that colonialism, I think the African is kind of naive. Maybe they, these leaders who want to do right. Maybe they just were not. They didn't understand the ruthlessness of this bastard. They didn't understand, and also the psychopathic nature. You're not to embarrass, like you said, not to embarrass your master in public, and that
Yeah.
that right there, you know, could mean
I
your
gave you
death.
the story of that Kenyan MP in the
Oh
60s.
yeah,
He went
yeah.
to a fundraiser and
The fun with the fundraising shit.
yeah, Kenyatta raised I think $1 million. He raised 3 million. He was killed. How do you raise more than the president?
That's crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, well, they'd already set a psychopath, or they already, they did brain typing on Jomo, but they always do brain typing on these niggas. Okay, what kind of moron is this before we put them in power? And so this is crazy. I'd be happy. Wow, you donate that much, man. You're really, you're a real philanthropist. You care. I'm not like, you did more than me. So it's not about helping people. It's about what I look like a big man. So you don't give a fuck about what the it's all a ruse. You don't give a shit about helping nobody. It's how you look. So exactly. So they put a psychopath up in there. I'd be, as an African, going back to our ways, our culture, be like, wow, good looking out, man. You really care. Thanks for matching me and doing even more. That would be African. No. God damn it. Who do you think you are? You think you're better than me? What? What's it got to do with being better? What?
Yeah, that was the man that I gave you the story of. He had fought in the war, so he had a pistol he had been given by his friend, and after that, the police commander slapped him for, he's a man and another man slaps you and you have a gun, slaps you for contributing more than the president, and so he reached for his gun, and his friend who had given him the gun shot him because he knew that he would. If you remember that story.
Yeah, I remember what you said. I told you I would have shot the shit out of his ass. I'm not going to reach for the gun, not going to use it. But him being African, again, he's like, maybe I can de-escalate the situation. It's not as bad as it is because it's humanity. His African humanity took over more than his own self-preservation, his own survival. I shot the shit out your motherfucking ass. so like I tell people laugh. I told a story earlier. This is the day before yesterday. We did Thursday. It's about being in Iraq. I don't give a shit. I told you, any kind of kids, don't come up and say, "Hey, American, can I have candy?" Hey, keep everybody away from me. I'm gonna shoot you in the face. I'm gonna shoot you for real. I don't want. They might get this kid booby trapped tomorrow. He might have bombs on his ass. They got I'm gonna be all nice. Hey, little kid. Next thing I know, this motherfucker. They got that kid loaded with bombs and blow my ass up with them. And people laugh. I wasn't coming back home without my dick. Anybody getting blown up? I need my dick tomorrow. I can't come home without my dick. I don't care what. You might get all fucked up. Can't come. You got your dick no more. What's the use of living? God damn. And he got my dick. I just walking around all fucked up, leg gone, arm gone. Nah. So people laughed at me tomorrow. I said, "Hey, I knew you crazy. You too hypersensitive." That's right. I'm going back with all my arms tomorrow, my legs, and my dick. I'm going back with all my shit. I'm not gonna be all fucked up. What happened to you, old timer? I locked us in the war in Iraq. My whole fucking foot is gone. Nah, fuck that. Nope. I'm gonna have my foot and my dick. All of it.
I was just looking at if you look at everything that has been happening in Africa, it's literally a real life application of Robert Greene's. For example, we're talking about Law 12 of using selective honesty and generosity to disarm your victim. We look at Law 14, for example, it talks about pose as a friend, work as a spy. Yeah. Isn't that what they do?
Exactly what they do. Joe just demonstrates the mind of the European. He's telling you're going into their psychopathy. And since the African is not a natural psychopath, he caught off guard. Now you notice he's caught off guard with all these dealings. He thinking motherfuckers being straight up with him. When the European is never straight up with you. Exactly right, Damori. You don't know how to deal with a psychopath. Shit, you're not psychopathic by nature. You're like, God damn. So it takes you years to learn you're fucking with a psychopath and how to adjust your foreign policy to deal with this person. Me and you, we being straight up. I don't think you spied on me trying to manipulate me, the more you want the best outcome from you and the best outcome come from me. That's called Ubuntu. I am because you are because I am. That's our African nature. We're not saying, I go in this agreement to try to deceive the Moray and fuck him up and take everything he got. Why would I want to do that? But that's the Europeans' mindset. It's crazy. And you're right. Coming out of supposedly independence, we unleashed, psychopaths were unleashed on us, man. We don't know how to deal with this crazy bastard. Even though we've been colonized for over 100 years with this crazy motherfucker. We still don't know, we didn't understand this person is fucked up in the head. Fucking with a psychopath, man. It's crazy. We go ahead, Damari.
You look at, I'm looking at Law 14 and realizing that is why we have military camps all over Africa, British military camps, and they're posing as friends. They tell you we are here to train. For example, in Kenya, they claim they are here to train the KDF. They are here to train the Kenyan Defense Force.
How long you gonna train the KDF? Why the KDF ain't left? You've been there 60, 70 years now. How long does it take to train a motherfucker? That's crazy. And then and Boko Haram is still running around there because you the one funding the shit. How long does it take you to train the Kenyans? Because it only took a year. They would learn your skills and they would learn how to train their people. Why does it take goddamn 70 years to keep training somebody?
Why does it take 2,000 forces to train the KDF? 2,000 British forces we have. In addition to the US, I don't know how many US forces we have. So, but they pose as friends who are here to help us, to train us, but they are working as spies in.
Yeah, of course. I told you spies.
They are here to gather information.
Okay, tomorrow when your kid gets 8, how long are you supposed to train a child? When does a child ever grow up? Huh? Just in nature. So you got your child, of course, you got to train him. All right. But child becomes an adult, and then your child's going to get mad if you keep trying to rule his life because now he's an adult. You
can't train a child for 67 years. Is the child Gambian?
Right. Because your child, every child has a thing of rebellion once they become an adult. They don't want to be ruled anymore. That's the nature of being an adult. The child doesn't want to be ruled. They'll listen to you, but they're going to make their own decisions. I can't tell my children what to do anymore. They're grown. I can try to guide and say, hey, I would do this, but I wouldn't do that if you're gonna do that. But at the end of the day, they're adults. It's their decision to make, not mine. I can give my my references and my say, you know what, it might be better to do like this. They can say, nah, I'm doing it like that. What can I do? Because they're now adults. They're not children. I can't now make decisions for them like I could when they were children. They were children. Now they're adults. They might say, I've had my kids tell me, Dad, stay out of it. Okay, all I can do. They're adults now. I can say, I'm forcing you to do what I'm telling you to do. He said, no, Dad, stay out of it. It's my decision to make. And what can I do? Fall back, because now they're adults. And that's the truth. And sometimes everybody grows up.
Yep, and we have refused to grow up because at one point we're supposed to tell them, even the training that you're saying you're giving us, it's enough now, we can train ourselves.
Exactly. That's not that because they don't want Africans to become exactly. They want to keep you constantly dependent on them. And then laugh, look at the African, he can't grow up. That's why, just like Ibram said,
11.
We got to grow up.
Dependent on them.
Yeah, exactly. Keep them dependent. Because dependent keeps making them wealthy, impoverishing you. So yeah, got to grow up. It's unknown how long these motherfuckers been here. 7. I wasn't even born. I'm the new
You look at Law 15. It says, crush your enemy totally.
Totally.
When dealing with an enemy, ensure that you eliminate them completely.
Totally. Yeah, make it so they can never come back to hurt you. That's right. You crush them. That's not African.
Look at the case study of how they've done that in Africa. Look at what they did in Congo in 1960. It's up to date. Congo has never stood back on its knees.
No.
Because they crushed. Yeah, look at Libya with Gaddafi. Has
Yeah,
Libya ever never raised?
You look at Libya today. Libya is so fucked up today. It's great. Libya wasn't an advanced country. Now it's a backwater failed state because they said they were bringing them to more democracy. What kind of democracy is this? Now I'm all fucked up. See, like I said, they rule by deception. You got democracy. All that Machiavellian shit. Come in, destroy all your shit, steal your resources. Yeah, you dumb bastard. You got democracy. What? My whole country is destroyed. Yeah, but you got democracy now. Our democracy. It's fucking crazy, psychopathic. So, yeah. And that's why, as the more educational system, shout out to Kibaki, and the more heads connected, and I agree with them. Kibaki knew instinctively, okay, I'm going to put in motion the education up for my people to rise quietly. And ain't nobody going to see it for 20 years. Because these children, I told you, in a generation, you teach a child good in a generation, they'll change everything. And that's Gen Z, that they taught with free education and certain books within the schools, within the curriculum, quietly, not making a fanfare. The European didn't know what the fuck was going on. He quietly put certain books into that curriculum because he wasn't trying to be a despot forever. He said, I'm trying to free Kenya. And so he knew with the children in a generation, he would plant seeds of revolution in their minds because he would teach them how to think.
Yeah.
See, they don't want Africans to think, critical thinking. Keep the African dumb as long as possible. Over religious, stupid, not knowing how the world works, and scared of everything. So Kibaki slowly behind the scenes had already put that into motion and is bearing the fruits what it is now because Kenya would never go back. Kenya's too smart. It'll never go back to what it was. No matter what rule them try to put the brutality they try to use, you can't listen. Once the sun come up and the crow's already crowing, Joey said, crockadoodle, doodle, whatever else she said. You can't make them stop. And that's what Kenya's at because of the educational system. See, that the other African nations don't realize that. They just think Kenyans just all of a sudden got unscared and became heroes. And we're heroic. Don't understand the foundation was set 20 years ago through education. That's why no other country still in Africa can duplicate. They can imitate, but they can't duplicate what the Kenyans done because the Kenyans the Gen Zs have a certain amount of knowledge, a certain amount of sophistication that other Africans at their age would never afford it.
And the thing about the education system is once you are educated, you get analytical skills and you are able to think critically. So it doesn't even matter what they teach you.
Exactly.
You'll get the analytical skills to teach for them. It doesn't matter what they teach. The moment they have taught you how to read, the moment you've known how to be analytical, doesn't matter what they teach you, you're going to teach yourself. You're going to read something else and understand that what was taught was not the truth.
Exactly. And if you guys remember, King Leopold said, teach the nigga to read. I think
but not how to reason.
And I think, the more I read that on one of the shows. Yeah. Teach the nigga to read, but don't teach him how to reason. Keep him stupid. Yeah. Exactly. And so what DeMar says, right, once you learn how to think, not what to think, that was Kibaki was doing. Like I said, you're going to get more curious. You'll start reading more books on your own, and you have a critical mindset. See, this always was dangerous to Europeans because they would lose Africa. Because, you got too many critical thinkers. You can't fool me with your goofy shit. Tell me, I'm going to take these dumbass loans. Motherfucker, I'm the one with all the resources. You crazy? I'm not signing these fucked up deals. You got me fucked up. Crazy. Now, you need what I got. You need it to power your own civilization. It's not even. Go ahead.
Because the moment you already have a 14-year-old reading, analyzing, The Animal Farm by George Orwell, a 14-year-old.
Yeah.
Moment you already have a 15-year-old reading and analyzing, I don't know, Betrayal in the City, books by Okot Bitek, books by Chinua Achebe, books by Ngugi wa Thiong'o, people who are not even in Africa anymore because they ran away from Africa because they would have been killed. They lived in Africa.
Yeah.
But those are the books that you having 15-year-olds read. Not just read because it's in literature, you read and analyze. You are told to give the themes in the Animal Farm, so you have to internalize it. So what you're teaching those people is not just you're teaching them to be analytical. You're teaching them to read between the lines, because I'm supposed to get themes from a book, so you'll have to read between the lines. And the moment you taught somebody how to reason, then that's the end of it.
That's the end of it. Exactly. That's the end of it. Because
you might force them to read force them to read the whole Bible. They're going to analyze it and they are going to know this is a lie.
Yeah, they know it's a lie, but don't go to the extreme like the Maurice Sprint. You get all mad because you know it's a lie. But there's truth within that lie, because the Africans who wrote that book were forced to write it. They said you'll get it when you get smart enough, like the more you analyze it, you know it means something different. You understand that Jesus didn't mean a person. Jesus meant you. You're supposed to raise a vibration. You're the Christ. So when you read that text, it says, and when Jesus tells us stuff, you're just like me, and you'll do more than me, and you'll be your God's just like me, and you'll go on to do more. And you learn to analyze, this shit, he's talking about something different. He's talking about not him. He's talking about the nature, and all of us are Christ. So the African knew eventually you're gonna wake up smart enough. You get out on the other end, as the Morris said. You would read it, and you wouldn't take it literally. You would understand these are parables or conditions that you're supposed to apply in your life. So in the Bible, you don't throw it all the way off, because the truth is written there, but it's written esoterically for you to find it. All right? Written esoterically for you to go back and capture it. Because the African was the African was forced to make the religion for the white man. And so he put a lot of real information in there, when he was making this fake story. But the esoteric version is still true. He was letting you know that you're the Christ. You remember, he said, I see God, and God is what? The pineal. His name was Pineal. The African was letting you know the pineal gland is your connection to the true creator. That's in the book. Europeans didn't know what the fuck they was writing, but the African was writing that shit. Like, God, pineal, what the fuck does this mean? So the African was putting this true spirituality within the book, and knew eventually the African would start waking up, understand esoterically what these things meant. He was hiding the truth in plain sight. If you were smart enough, like North, you learned how to analyze things again, you would go back and capture your own spirituality through this fake religion that they had created. You go back and capture it. So, because the Bible's all esoteric. So a lot of white people realize, crackers, hey, this thing is esoteric. It ain't real. There's some hidden meanings in this shit. Yeah, stupid. So don't do like the Morris Sprint, throw the baby out with the bathwater. This shit's phony. It means it ain't no God. I'm gonna be an atheist. No, moron. No. You weren't supposed to go completely to the crazy. There is a creator. Like the shit they gave you. There's a creator.
That one went all the way to the other side.
Yeah,
looking at law 16, that was law 15. Crush your enemy totally.
So,
Law 16 talks about use absence to increase respect and honor. Something that, again, as Africans, we have refused to learn. That's why you look, China is going to organize, the China Africa Expo. Yeah. Every African politician, president is going to be there.
I told you this because this is cultural. It's not your nature to do none of these laws. That's why it's out of our nature. They need, like I said, that these morons are not analytical. They didn't understand what the European, since he set up the system, you should follow these damn behavioral things. For real, you're right. You should take scarcity that increases your power. You don't be
Yep.
readily available to nobody. But like you said, all these leaders, because Joey said they have another council. I said again, did they just have one of these motherfuckers like 6 months
Yeah. We have at this point we have to stop acting in the typical African nature, because you can't take diplomacy to a battlefield. There is somewhere else to take that. So when dealing with them, we have to deal with them the way they deal with us. We have to also apply the 48 laws of power, because they're applying the same.
You have to.
So
You
in
gotta
as much as it's not our nature to do some of the things, to be manipulative, to be
you got to learn. Exactly.
psychopathic, we have to learn to be that, because we're dealing with
You
people
get-
who apply the dark triad traits.
Exactly. You're dealing with their psychology. So you got to understand the enemy you're dealing with. It's exactly right. You got to prepare. Win any war, the art of war, you got to understand your enemy thoroughly. So I always say, when I used to tell you guys multiple reading, if you're going to read the 48 laws of power, you must read the art of war to understand the 48 laws of power. Okay? So,
Yeah, we're going to analyze that also. Sun Tzu's The Art of War.
yes, so you need to understand the art of war. So because reading the 48 laws of power helps you understand your enemy thoroughly. So you're not coming to him butt naked in a child, because their mindset and the way they look at the world is just not African. It's not your psychology. So if you're going to go to war, and what they are, then economic war with us, whether you like it or not,
Yep.
domination of resources on the planet, which are mostly in Africa, they're going to be their true nature. That's who they are. So you need to study your enemy to understand what you're dealing with, so you can effectively combat what he's trying to do to you. Go ahead, Demore.
Yeah, so using absence to increase our respect include us boycotting all those meetings and conferences they have. Let them hold the Japan Africa Expo, and no African turn up.
Exactly, because you understand, you see, Africa's the prize. They keep telling me to come for Africa. So the more I say, you're right, your scarcity of not coming increases your respect.
In fact, we should be the one holding these expos. I
Right.
said we should be the one holding the Nairobi Beijing Expo.
Yeah.
They come here and we have the discussion here, not there.
Talking about the power dynamics. So the more it's talking about acquiring power, switching the power dynamics. And that's true. That's what you would do. Look at what you got it.
You go to Law 18. Law 18 talks about do not build fortresses to protect yourself. Isolation is dangerous.
It's
It
dangerous.
says isolation can weaken your position by cutting you off from valuable information and support. And I love how, for example, the Sahel is using this. You look at Niger, for example, for the fact that it's trying to liberate itself, it's still not working in isolation. I was talking about how Niger has signed a 400 million deal with China on oil. So it's not like we are liberating ourselves so that we can build a fortress around ourselves, because at the end of the day, we still need to trade with the world.
No,
We
but
still need to spend our resources.
and also that'll be dangerous, because you don't know what plots are coming against you. And the Europeans not going to stop plotting on you. So always, at least you'll have other allies that can help you. You don't want to make yourself a fortress, because the Europeans never going to stop warring on you. Never. So you need to have other avenues of information available to you, so you can still defend yourself effectively.
And Law 19 talks about, Law 19, I think, is what we have been talking about for the major part of the show, that so many of the early good African politicians dead. Law 19 talks about know who you are dealing with. Do not offend the wrong person.
Yeah, exactly.
Understand the background, motivation, and potential reaction of those who you interact with. And this marries this with the art of timing. Also master the art of timing. So do not offend the wrong person too early.
Yeah, exactly. Don't come out trying to be a bold leader. I'm going to say what in your face. You're not strong enough to say shit to nobody's face right now. So your thing is to Cowtown say Europeans were there. You helped us. Thank you. We're going to do our best, and no partnership and blah blah blah. You don't get up there and say you no good that speech the mama did it. You no good bastards been stealing and robbing from us, because you can see the face on the Europeans when they what. He said, you no good bastards have been robbing from us. It's now going to be Congo for the Africans. And I'm going to use my whole, Congo don't lift all Africa out of poverty. Congo has that much wealth to lift all Africa. You hear them crackers hearing that shit? When the mama was saying that shit, he's like, hold on. They think, hold on, cracker. You going to do what? I mean, hold on, nigga. You going to do what? He's like, we're going to use all the stealing and theft you crackers have been doing for generations after generations. The Congo's wealth is not going to be used, not just for the Congo, but for all Africans on the continent. It's okay, like most say, know who you talking to. And they tell you in that documentary that he pissed them crackers off so mad saying that shit, because he was asserting his dominance over them, and they did not want to hear. Like the more say, know the room you talking to. You talk that African shit if you want to, motherfucker. You don't got no army strong enough to stop me from coming to see you.
Yep. You're still operating on 50-year-old helicopters and
exactly. You ain't got no
C3s and guns that were used in the World War. So you have to be careful on
exactly
who you are offending at the moment, unless you are united as an African people,
exactly.
as a single country.
Exactly. Till you get there,
you stand no chance.
Yeah, exactly. Till united. Because you talking that shit. I always got spies throughout the country. I always know I got African moron puppets. I don't turn against you. Say, hey, don't you want to be rich, nigga? Don't you want to be the president? Yeah, I like to be rich. Yeah, white daddy. Not too much of that in Africa. I want to be rich, white daddy. Okay, I want you to hit this nigga in the head when you get your chance, and then throw his ass in acid. And just like the most, and that can be your best friend. You don't know what this. The Negro is susceptible always to be corrupted by fake money. Don't you want to be rich? I got a villa for you in the south of France, one in England too. Or what? And just like you, I got a whole library of wine for you niggas. Special wine. Wine? Yeah. Kind of clothing.
That's what happened to Nkrumah. He was betrayed by his best friend for money, the same way.
Right. Money
yeah. And as we come to the end, the last law that we're going to look at is Law 20. Then we're going to finish with the other 28 later. Law 20 is another law that Africans should really, really embrace. And it says, do not commit to anyone.
It's right.
Yes, right. Do not commit to China. Do not commit to, I don't know, the BRICS. Do not commit to the UN. Right. Do not commit to nobody. Maintain independence. Avoid commitment to any single person. Because what that does, it allows you to be flexible and control your own fate. So now I can be able to trade with the, if I'm in the BRICS, then how will I can't even trade with people from the NATO. I need to sell my gold to somebody who is in NATO, but I can't because I went to the BRICS. I don't want to be committed to anyone as an African country because I want to trade with everybody. I want to be flexible. I want to control. I don't want to be tied. I don't know by the BRIC constitution. I don't know by the NATO constitution. I don't know by the what. Yep.
Exactly. And what that does, that increases your power and also increases people knocking you out because both sides are benefiting from you. So you're now valuable to NATO, valuable to the G7, also valuable to BRICS. So you're less likely to get knocked off. Somebody put a coup on your ass. So yeah, you want to say uncommitted. You want to be like the finest woman at the party. I'm not committed to none of you niggas. I'm uncommitted. So all of them are chasing after her ass. Women know learn to be a woman. Women know when they're chasing after their ass. They know it. And so they think uncommitted. They be very polite. Oh, yeah, it's good to hear from you. But the other dude comes, that the woman knows. The woman that gets everything is the woman that stays uncommitted. That's a woman's trick. Learn that. Woman to smile in your face, turn around, smile to the next dude. Yay. She's uncommitted. And so you constantly chasing after her. Learn that. I don't commit to nobody.
Yep, and that gives you bargaining power, because now the Brits want you, and you are in a position of power, because
Exactly.
I'm not committed to anybody, but the moment I'm committed to this group of people, then the other group of people loses interest.
That's right.
Now,
Exactly. You diminish your power.
it actually makes you a power broker when you.
Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly what it does.
Yeah, so as we come to the end of the show, we're going to be looking at the other 28 laws maybe next week. A big shout out to Jiba Jabba, who was saying that we should keep them guessing.
Right. Never.
Yep, that's
never,
the secret.
Never commit your asshole to one person. Then you might get fucked the wrong way.
And so I hope you enjoy the rest of your day, family. It's a very, very cold Saturday afternoon in Nairobi. So I hope you enjoy the rest of your day and the rest of your weekend. Make sure you join HR the Messenger. He's going to be having a guest today in the next few minutes. So enjoy the rest of your weekend. Much love, family.
What's the weather in Nairobi today?